computer. All right, awesome. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming for today's College Success Workshop. Today, we're going to be working with Professor Jay Jackal, and he's going to be doing a workshop on how to use citation correctly. All right. I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Professor Jay.
Thank you. Thanks, Zyra. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the workshop here. So, as Zyra said, my name is Jay Jackal. I've been teaching at DVC since 2018. I teach English 122, 123, 126. Previously, I also taught 118 when we still had that course. And I also teach at San Francisco State, mostly first and second year, the reading and composition. So thanks for having me. Today's lesson is going to be about kind of the sort of peanut butter and jelly, if you will, the perfect match of these two very useful resources in college level formal academic writing, essay writing in particular, and that is the in-text or parenthetical citation and its relationship to the works cited list. And I'll be using MLA style today for all my examples and whatnot. So I know that sometimes in some classes, maybe particularly psychology, you'll use APA style. Totally get that. It's a great style because it not only offers the last name of the author of the work that you're quoting or paraphrasing from, but the year that that was published. And that's super, super helpful. That's not how MLA works. MLA is usually the last name of the author when available and a page number when available. If there's no last name of the author, then what you're going to do, and I'll get into this in more detail in a bit, is cite a shortened version of the article title that you're drawing from, whether that's a online news article or a web page or whatever it is. So just wanted to show you or make that distinction between MLA and APA. So we're using MLA today, and as such, I'm actually going to share my screen with you all and show you this super cool, very helpful resource that we refer to as the OWL. All right, let me see. Here we go. So the OWL is actually an acronym. It's an acronym because it spells out a word, right? Otherwise, it would be an initialism. And there's an important distinction between those two as well. Initialism would be like TV, capital T, capital V for television, right? The OWL is the online writing lab at Purdue University's English department. So what I want to tell you about the OWL is this is an incredibly useful resource. Any questions that you have at all about formatting college level writing can be answered here at the owl.purdue.edu. Okay, and let me see if I can actually put this in the chat, and hopefully that will be part of the recording as well. So there's the link. And the link that I gave in the chat here is to the page that's MLA general format. That's a good place for us to start today, just because specifically we're talking about things that are kind of on this part of the website. So the website in general, as you can see here in the left margin, I mean, it starts with general writing, and then you get this drop down menu, right? So I can't tell you how useful this resource is. I am a staunch proponent of using this resource all the way through college to help you write. I still use it. I used it when I was writing my master's thesis, which was about 200 pages, so kind of like a short book. Can't say enough good things about the OWL. So anyway, when you go to this source, you can see that they have these arrows for the drop-down menus, right? So I'm just going to familiarize you with a few parts of the OWL, and then we'll be on our way with instructional materials that I have to share with you all. So you can see here's MLA style, the drop-down menu. There's a sort of introduction that explains what MLA is and what it's not. An overview and workshop. That's neat. That's all helpful stuff. But I've taken us to the formatting and style guide drop down menu here. And so that starts with general format. Now, again, they're going to tell you just general guidelines. Type your paper on a computer and print it out on standard, like easy stuff like that. Importantly, double space your entire essay, right? And it should, generally speaking, at least for all my classes and all the other instructors I know in the English departments that I work at, be in 12-point Times New Roman font without exception. And that includes at the top right of every page, your last name and the page number of your essay. All right. So you can see this is all this general stuff, and that is super helpful. But what I want to do is scroll down here, and let's see if we start with basic format, MLA works cited page, basic format. So let me tell you this, that the guiding principle for citations and a works cited list is this: the citations act as a shortcut to the works cited list. Okay, they work as a shortcut to the works cited list, so they must exactly match in whatever word they're using inside those parentheses. And when I refer to citations as in text or parenthetical, it's the same thing. Parenthetical just means they're in parentheses. In text means it's in the body of the text, right? It's actually in the sentence. So those citations act as a shortcut for your reader, right? Everything is for your reader. Everything is for your audience. You know who wrote this source that you're drawing from. Like, you don't necessarily need that as a note to remind yourself, right? Not at all. Everything is for your reader. And I'll get to more of that in a sec as well. So let's say in that citation in parentheses, you have the last name of an author named Glover, okay? And we should be able to look at that. Now, if it came from a source that has page numbers, then it would say Glover and then a number, right? No comma, no word page, no abbreviation for page, just a name and a number. Obviously, you want to capitalize, all names because they're proper nouns and all that stuff. So just capital G Glover, and then let's say the number 9, right? So that would be for the page number. Now, if for some reason there's no page number available, let's say, for instance, you read it online, it's an online article, they don't have page numbers, no worries. Just make sure that you have the last name of the author in there, because that last name is what you're going to look for when you flip to that part of your MLA works cited list, which should be alphabetized by citation. So it would say Glover, comma, and then Glover's first name. Let's just say Donald Glover, right? So if I'm reading something in your essay and it's a quote from Donald Glover and I'm fascinated by this and I want to see the source itself and maybe do some research of my own, or maybe I'm a skeptical reader and I want to kind of fact check you, right? I should be able to go right to your MLA works cited list, scroll down the page alphabetically, right? Alphabetically by last name of author or first name of an article title if there's no author available. First word of an article title when there's no author available. And I should go Glover, comma, Donald, sweet. Here's the source. Here's all this information that your citation generator that you use online. I use easybib.com. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. This citation that your citation generator has created for you. So it has all this helpful information. Usually, the year it was published, the original publication source, let's say the name of the article itself, all that good stuff, right? And so and a URL. So oftentimes, if I'm reading a paper digitally, I can just click on that URL and go right to that source. Awesome. So anyway, in effect, that's the guiding principle. Your citations are a shortcut to the works cited list for your audience. That's why they're there. That's why we use them. That's why they're required. Okay. To note, that means that if you have 5 different citations in your essay, you absolutely have to have those same 5 and no more and no less citation entries in your MLA works cited list. Okay. I just want to make that abundantly clear, because I'll tell you what happens. Oftentimes, invariably, students will have like 4 or 5 sources in their essay that they, quote properly, and they do that well. But then you go down to the MLA Works Cited list, and there are like 8 or 9 sources, listed in the citation entries. You're like, okay, well, there's a disconnect here, right? If we have 4 or 5 up here, we need to have 4 or 5 down here, and they need to be exactly the same 4 or 5. So what I suggest to all writers, all my students, is keep track of that stuff as you go. Like, you don't have to be, particular about the formatting of your MLA Works Cited list as you go, because you can, take all that information, whether it's a URL or whatever, and plug it in later into the search bars in your citation generating website. Again, I use EasyBib. You can make the list, so to speak, later on. But what you want to do is you want to keep track of, especially if you're doing your work online, you want to keep track of those URLs and make yourself just a little note, like, here's the author, here's the URL, and I use this source on like, page 1 or whatever. Just to keep track of this stuff, because otherwise what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to go back after you've written the whole first draft of the essay. You're going to have to go back and make sure that you're citing everything as you go properly, and you're not forgetting any sources, right? Because that's a problem. So again, the citations have to exactly match what's represented, by their corresponding source in the MLA Works Cited list. It's extremely important, okay? If they don't exactly match, it's wrong. And again, what I mean by exactly match is, let's say, Glover, for an example, right? Okay, so I should be able to scroll down and see Glover. If there were, let's say, an article that did not have a credited author, and it was called Climate Change is Upon Us, okay? Just simple title. There's no author. I read this on NASA, okay? So climate change is upon us. Now, if you have no other articles without authors credited that start with the word climate, you could simply put the shortened version of the article title, climate, okay, right in there. If you had one that said, climate change is upon us, and then you also cited another article in your essay saying like climate change, is caused by, or climate change is caused by human beings, scientists claim, okay? Then you would have to switch it up so that there would be no confusion between the climate change is upon us and climate change is caused by humans, right? So to cite the one, you would say a shortened version still, climate change is upon, that's fine. Or climate change is upon us is fine. And then the other one you would cite, climate change is caused. See, it's still a shortened version of that article title, right? I'm just saying that so that you understand that in the rare event that you have 2 articles with no author that start with the same words, you can't just call them both climate change, because that'll cause confusion. All right, I don't want to cause confusion though, so let me continue here on the OWL. So basic rules, here we are with just the works cited page basic format. This is all helpful stuff. I'm going to come back to the OWL in just a little bit, but I want you to know that understand that most of the time what you're going to be citing will probably be article titles, or articles from either news sources, media sources on the internet, hopefully peer-reviewed journals. Hopefully you've spent some time at the DVC library, if not in person because of COVID, then perhaps online. And you've taken a look at all of the amazing, the selection of peer-reviewed journals we have here. So peer-reviewed journals are a great source, even more so than news and information sources, because they generally come from seriously credible experts in the field, okay? So I highly recommend looking for your sources in peer-reviewed journals in that format. All right, so let me share this one thing with you that I just actually started writing this morning because I started thinking about Citations, a lot. All right, so it's in progress, and I was going to kind of write this as we go, but it turns out we're not live today, we're recording. So anyway, bear with me. I call this instructional material, and if you would like the finished version of this, I will gladly give it to you. You can email me at the letter J, JACKL, that's JJACKL @dvc.edu, and just introduce yourself, say, Mr. Jackal, I would like the instructional material from your citations college success workshop. Gladly give anything I got to you. All right, I call this a perfect match in text parenthetical citations and the MLA works cited list, because again, they have to perfectly and exactly match. So let me just read this to you. The context for this lesson is that all formal academic, that is college level, research essays are expected to have their sources cited when using quoted or paraphrased material in the body of the essay, okay? That means directly quoted or paraphrased. And keep in mind, to avoid plagiarism, if you use anyone else's ideas at all to write your essay, you absolutely must cite them, okay? Now, if you take one of their ideas that's rather long and you want to kind of condense it and put it in your own words, that's great. But you have to do two things. Make absolutely positively sure that it's really in your own words and you're not just changing a few words, okay? Because if you just change a few words, which again, invariably happens in student essays, it's still plagiarism. If there are 3 or more words in sequence from that source that are taken directly verbatim, and it's not quoted, sorry, it's not put in quotation marks, it constitutes plagiarism. So be careful about what you think is a paraphrase, okay? I say it's always better to just quote things. All right, so those in text or parenthetical, because they are framed by parentheses, citations, same thing, function as shortcuts to the works cited list, as I mentioned, of all the sources a writer used to compose the essay, okay? So again, anything that you use to compose that essay, you absolutely have to cite, okay? And if you're using their direct words verbatim, if it's a direct quote of 3 or more words, you have to put it in quotation marks. Nevertheless, you have to cite it. Keep in mind that the works cited list is not a bibliography, but it's a list of sources used to compose the essay, okay? It's a list of sources whose exact words, or if paraphrased, whose ideas came from secondary sources. So the idea here, again, to just hit this one home, is they're not ideas that are from the student writer's original. They're not the student writer's original ideas or words. Sorry, I think I need some more coffee. So the Modern Language Association, when I refer to MLA, this is who I'm referring to. The Modern Language Association's, this esteemed group of scholars who come up with this set of rules, and they revise them regularly as needed and whatnot. But they set the formal academic standard for writing in college. Okay, so when I refer to MLA, that initialism means Modern Language Association. They have specific rules for how to format citations in the essay body and in the works cited list. The instructional material that's in this piece that I'm actually still working on explains those rules and offers visual examples for you to check your work against to ensure your formatting complies with these rules. So at the end of this piece here, I'll show you a sample model works cited list. It's a sample because it comes from a student. It's a model because yours should look exactly like the model in terms of the way that it's formatted. Formatted meaning double spaced, hanging indent, some other things that I'll get to. The words works and cited, top center in the, and capitalized at the top of your page. So I'll show you that model, like the goal, sort of where we're headed. I'll show you that model a little bit later. All right, so just to keep this in mind, because a lot of times, we're in college and we're, taking in all this information or whatever, but we don't stop to think about why something is the way it is. So I just want to point this out real quick. 2 points to remember every time that you write anything, and especially in academia, okay? Anytime that you write, your primary guiding principles should be 2 things. What's your purpose and audience awareness? So purpose and audience, just keep those 2 in mind. Always, 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 every time you write, purpose and audience. A note on purpose. When you write, think first of your purpose, okay? So ask yourself, when you sit down to write, what ideas am I trying to convey to my audience in this piece of writing? The answer to that is your purpose, okay? And your purpose always has to be more than, I was given this writing assignment in a class or whatever, I got to write this thing. There's a grade at the end of it. Like your purpose has to be more than that, because if it's not, and that's how you approach the writing, like, well, it's just an assignment I have to do, it's going to show in your writing. It's going to feel like drudgery when you're writing it, and it's probably going to read like drudgery for your audience. They will likely be able to tell that, you didn't really put your heart and soul into this thing or any sort of effort. So what I always suggest is focus on conveying your ideas to a wide audience with concise, coherent, cohesive writing. Concise meaning be economical with your words, try to make some authorial choices where you keep things succinct, to the point, compact. Coherent in the sense that, well, the syntax of your writing, so the way that your sentences make grammatical sense really matters. And oftentimes students won't, they'll make errors in that department because they won't proofread their own work, right? They write it once and they kind of send it off to whoever's going to assess it. Bad idea. Always, always, always proofread your work. I even tell students you should proofread your texts before you send them to people, because you never know what you're going to send, etc. Definitely proofread emails, especially if you're writing to an instructor, especially if you're writing to an English instructor. You just got to proofread that stuff. Why do you do it? To catch and correct errors. Okay. So that will most likely ensure that your writing is a little bit more coherent. And finally, cohesive. Does the essay have a thread that runs through it? Does it start in a certain place and go somewhere else and then finish in a certain place that all makes sense together as one cohesive unit, right? Or is it kind of all over the place? Do you throw some ideas out there that don't connect to the following idea, and so on and so on? Again, proofreading helps. Okay, that's on purpose, right? Now on audience. Here's the note on audience. Even when you write in a journal, you have an audience, right? Even when you write in your own journal, you have an audience. You have an audience of 1, it's yourself, right? Most of the time though, you're writing to a much wider audience that can include your instructor, of course, and peers in a class, tutors or other people proofreading and giving feedback on your work. These could be friends, these could be family, or even total strangers in the case of writing of yours that may end up in or being published with your consent, of course, online or in your English department's writing journal. Okay. So again, keep this in mind. Your audience is never going to only be, or at least it shouldn't, your instructor. So I know in middle school and high school, we think about this like, the idea is, well, to write to the instructor, basically, like, what does that teacher want to hear? What is that teacher, interested in? Or just thinking that like that teacher is your only reader, right? And that causes problems with our creativity and just the way we write. We can't just relax and write if we feel like we're trying to sort of answer questions that instructor might have that we don't even know, right? So just relax and write, but keep your audience in mind at all times. So understand that literally everything that you do is for your audience, okay? This includes use of punctuation and paragraph breaks, to, the tone of your writing, rhetorical moves that you'll make. And if you've never heard that phrase, let me just tell you, a rhetorical move would be like an appeal. I'm sure you've heard of ethos, pathos, logos. You're appealing to someone's sense of compassion or empathy if you're using pathos. With logos, it's you're trying to show some sort of information, often in data or statistics that can move your reader, like really move them, persuade them, right? Ethos is about credibility, your credibility, the credibility of the source that you're quoting, and all that stuff. So tone, rhetorical moves, which can also include humor and satire. All of this is for your audience. Okay, so this also includes, speaking of audience, your in-text and parenthetical citations. You put these in there, again, circling back to this, you put these in there for your audience, okay? They're not for you, they're for your audience. They're helpful to you, I'm sure, but they're for your audience to follow along and understand that you've done your homework, okay? And if they're skeptical of your reading, or if they just are optimistic, or sorry, not optimistic, but if they are enthusiastic about following up on that particular idea or source or author or whatever, they can follow that citation to your works cited list, find the source, and go off on their own and learn something, which is exciting. So this includes the in-text and parenthetical citations and the works cited list. These two are most definitely for your audience's benefit. Now here's the scoop, right? This is nothing new. I've been saying this for a little bit, but they work in tandem with each other. So you can't have one without the other, and you can't have 4 of one and 6 of the other. They have to match. They work in tandem to show your readers that you've conducted quality research. They provide information so your readers can follow their own path of inquiry on your topic, or to fact check you if they're skeptical about some of the information or claims in your essay. Okay, so again, my writer's tip to you is just to understand that purpose and audience are always the driving factors. Those are the 2 main guiding principles of any piece of writing, and they relate to in-text parenthetical citations and the MLA works cited list very directly. So I wanted to give you an idea, or I wanted to give you some perspective on this so you can understand why we're doing this, why we use citations, why do we have an MLA works cited list. It's for your audience, okay? So check in with yourself as you begin the writing process. Make sure that you're keeping audience and purpose in mind, and check in regularly throughout it, right? That means don't just do it at the beginning and then never think about it again until, after the final essay or essay draft is submitted. Just ensure that you're being mindful of audience and purpose throughout the entire drafting process, okay? Your purpose and audience are all that matters in the writing. All right, so one quick question that came to mind, and this is probably the most common question about citations and formatting, is this. A student will say, I've already introduced the author as I was setting up the quote, right? So again, you never want to use a quote as a standalone sentence. You always want to give your audience as much information as you possibly can before you give the quote. So, for instance, you would say the name of the author of the source, right? And perhaps any professional titles that they have, any credentials, anything that you can tell your audience that will give them an idea of, oh, this person, is an expert in this field, or they're knowledgeable at least, right? Also, the name of the article title. If it's not an article and maybe it's a chapter from a book, include that. Say, in this chapter from this book written by this author. Always give the year that this information was published, because it's helpful to know, again, context, right? Well, is this recent relevant information, or is it outdated information? That type of thing. Okay. Always the original publication source. You just want to give all of that information before you give the quote the first time that you offer a quote from any source. Basically, You don't have to do that every single time if you're quoting Donald Glover 5 times in your essay. You don't have to say Donald Glover, member of the UN Council on Climate Change, in his article, Climate Change is Upon Us, written in 2019 and published in National Geographic magazine, states. You don't have to do that every single time that you quote that one source. But the first time you quote it, absolutely. So there's the setup, then there's the quote. And the question is, well, I've already, said the author's name in my setup for the quote. So why do I have to cite it again at the end of the sentence? It's a good question. It may seem redundant to some readers, and I understand, people's instincts or whatever might be like, well, I already said it, so what's it for? You know what it's for at this point in the workshop. It's a shortcut to the works cited list, right? So the short answer is yes, you have to cite it. You have to do both things. And the reason for this is audience awareness, right? And so you have to set up the quote with the author's, you have to name the author. And if there's no author available, you have to say, on NASA's website, this information was provided, and, all that stuff. But you absolutely positively have to cite it all the time. So anytime that you use someone else's work, you have to cite it. All right. So I'm going to move on to a sample list here. And I'm going to show you what it looks like, and we'll work backward from there. Let me share. And here we go. Okay. Excuse me. So what I'm doing is essentially I'm showing you the destination first, and then I'm going to show you how to get there. Okay. But I want you to, the reason that I do that, the reason I take this approach is because I want you to be able to visualize what ultimately this will look like, and to know a couple of things, right? Like if it doesn't look like this, to put a fine point on it, it's wrong and you have to make it look like this. Okay. But there are reasons it looks like this. Excuse me, I'm getting a little scratchy. So first you can see your last name goes here. I use this format where I say like, one page of however many pages your essay is. So if this were let's say a 5-page essay with a works cited list, it would be your last name and then one of 6, because this would be page 6, right? So you want to say, if you're citing more than one work in your essay, which usually we are, you want to say works cited, plural, okay? Works cited. Notice that everything on this page, as should be the case with your entire essay, is in 12-point Times New Roman font, okay? So far we have your last name, the page number, and centered in at the top of the page is works cited, capital W, capital C. If for some reason you only cite one work, and maybe it's a short essay or a short writing, then it's works cited, obviously. If you look over here, what you'll see is this is a citation entry in your works cited list. So when I refer to a citation entry, this is what I'm talking about. This is an entry in your works cited list. I've entered this into the works cited list here, okay? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 entries in this one essay. All right, good deal. You'll notice one thing as well. These are all alphabetized by the first letter of either the last name of the author of your source or the first word in an article title that does not credit an author, okay? And again, just as an example, if I were to be using this source in an essay, NASA supercomputing study breaks ground for tree mapping, carbon research, climate change, vital signs of the planet. That's a long title, right? So MLA, and you can find this information on the OWL at Purdue, MLA will say, just use a shortened title of a shortened version of the article title, okay? So in this list, you can see that there is no other source. There's not even any other source that doesn't have an author listed. Cool. So that's helpful. That helps us narrow it down real quick. But you can see that there's no other source here that starts with NASA. That is not only not the last name of an author, but here we go with this title of the article, right? So in your essay, this is how you would cite it. It would be NASA, all capitalized because NASA is an initialism, okay? National Aeronautic and Space Association. I'm blanket on what NASA stands for. Sorry. I love science. I just don't know if I'm correct about what NASA stands for. So parentheses, quotation marks, very important. Why? Because this isn't somebody's name. This is an article, okay? So short works get quotation marks, long works get italics. That's another lesson, another workshop or whatever. Suffice it to say, if you are quoting a source, if you're citing a source that is a shortened version of an article title, put it in double quotation marks, okay? And you can make it as short as possible. The word NASA would work just fine because we don't have any other competing sources that start with NASA. Great, good to know. Chances are, because we got this off the NASA website, nasa.gov, there's not going to be a page number. So parentheses, inside the parentheses, double quotation marks, NASA in all caps, you're good to go, okay? Not the website though. A lot of people will want to cite the website, and that's not what we're doing in this case, okay? Other than that, throughout this essay, the author has cited Ta-Nehisi Coates, Elise Gould, Ann Kaplan, Spike Lee. You get where we're going with this, okay? And by the way, if your writing calls for, which one of my assignments for all my students does, if your writing calls for you to use a film as a source, what you want to do is, and there's some conflicting information about this even on the OWL, but I plugged this in even as recent as this morning to the citation generator at easybib.com. And lo and behold, this is how it came out. So the director is the author of the text. If the film is the text that you're citing, then the director is the author of the text. And you guessed it, you want to cite the last name of the director here because that director is the author of the text. So Spike Lee directed Do the Right Thing. We got a little bit of helpful information here. Here's the studio, here's the year it was published. So if you're citing a film in your essay, in parentheses, you want to put the last name of the director of the film. Make sure you get the director of the film right. And you can find that stuff out. I'd stay away from Wikipedia. It's not always right, but IMDb is actually a great source. International Movie Database, I think is what IMDb stands for. So, all right. So I just want to show you, this is how it looks. And one thing that you'll notice here about the formatting that may seem very odd to you. It's almost like an inverted indent. Exactly. What this is called is a hanging indent right here. Okay, so this part right here, this is perhaps formatting wise one of the most important details of your works cited list. You have to get this right. Okay, even if you have to go in here and do it manually, I'll show you how to do that. This is called a hanging indent, and the hanging indent acts as sort of a tab that sticks out for the reader to very easily sort of find that source, even though it's alphabetized, right? In my master's thesis, my works cited was 10 pages long, so the hanging indent helps. The hanging indent shows here the last name of the author, Ta-Nehisi Coates, okay? You'll notice that the line under this is indented. The hanging indent, however, is fully justified to the left margin of the essay, okay? That's very helpful stuff. okay? So it sticks out so that it's easy for your reader's eye to catch. Coates, got it. Scroll down. I wanna read about Boots Riley in this film, Sorry to Bother You. Riley, got it. Well, this one is only one line, so you're good to go there. But if you wanted to read about dog bite statistics, okay, what was that? The writer quoted Wilson. Okay, Wilson here. Wilson, it sticks out. It's sort of distinguished from the rest of the citation entry very deliberately, very purposefully. Okay, that's so your reader can catch it quickly. So you got to do this. Always, now I'm sorry, I don't want to say always, but invariably, what will happen is, at least the first time that students do a round of this, I see a bunch of citation entries that are fully justified to the left, all the way down the page, kind of like a wall of text. That's wrong. If it doesn't look like this, it is incorrect. Okay. Now keep this in mind. Here's the rule. The first line of every separate citation entry, which this is, okay, these are separate citation entries. The first line has to be justified to the left margin. Every other line below that first line gets a single tab indent. That just means hit tab, come over here. If this were over here to the left, I can't manipulate this because it's a PDF. Oh wait, maybe I can. No, I cannot. Yes, I can. Look at that. I forgot it's the pages file. So if this were over to the left, I hit tab once. Perfect. Done and done. Okay. Single tab indented. Every line under the first line of each separate citation entry has to be single tab indented. Okay. This NASA one, same thing. Sarah Logan Wilson, same thing. So that's how it looks. And if you're watching this and you need to watch it again, that's the beauty of technology. You can pause, rewind, whatever. I know it's a lot of information in this workshop, so I'm just giving it to you all. I'm trying to give it to you all in a way that makes sense, but feel free to please use this recording as a tool that you can come back to again and again and again. Okay, now I'm going to show you. Let's see, the best way to do this would be, I'll just show you a sample essay. Yeah, there we go. That sounds like a brilliant idea, not just because I thought of it. All right. First, I got to pull up the essay. So let me make that. Let me get out of here. And here we go. All right, I got a sample student essay. And I'm about to share it. Hang on. Drum roll, please. Attention mounts. There we go. Okay, hopefully y'all can see this. It's a participants can now see your application. That's awesome. All right. So here's the essay itself. You can see from a distance here, it looks perfect. The entire essay is double spaced. It's all in 12-point Times New Roman. Keep in mind that even the header here is double spaced. There's no extra space between the bottom line of the header and the title here. There's no extra space between the title and the beginning of the essay. We're just good to go. All right. So incidentally, this assignment is called an iSearch essay. So the student is doing some research and sort of explaining their journey of critical inquiry. The assignment was to, pick a topic that you're interested in learning more about, ideally a social justice issue, and go and conduct some research on it, share your research results with us, and then explain how, through the process of writing this essay and conducting that research and all that, how your schemas or your prior knowledge on this topic was changed. How did it move the needle forward for the writer? Okay, so it's great work. It's a lot of fun, and it's a college level research essay. It's not a formal academic argument, but we're still using somebody else's ideas to write this essay nevertheless. So that means that there are going to be quotations in here, quoted material, maybe some paraphrased material, and citations, and a works cited list. All right. So I know for a fact that in this particular essay, that doesn't happen for a couple of pages, but you can see over here on page 3, this is where this is the part of the essay where the student starts sharing their research results. And here's a setup. Now, the essay is not perfect. It's missing some of the things that I had mentioned about, what you would want to tell your audience every time that you sort of introduce a source, an author, all that stuff that you're drawing from. But it's pretty good. It works as a sample anyway. So let me read this. In the article, Instagram use and young women's body image concerns and self-objectification, testing meditational pathways, by Jasmine Ferdouli, I'm going to say, et al. And et al. Means that there were several authors of this particular article. And so many that et al. Is actually an abbreviation, or it's a way of shortening the list of authors so that you can say Fardouli and colleagues, basically. I think et al. Is Latin for and others, I'm pretty sure. Fardouli et al. Acknowledge Instagram as a primary image-based social media platform that provides users with regular opportunities for comparison, and suggests that, quote, it may be more detrimental to women's appearance concerns than other social media platforms, such as Facebook, which is ironic because at the time this was written, Facebook didn't own Instagram, now they do, that contained more varied content. Arguable point for sure about Facebook and its varied content. Nevertheless, this is what the quote is. And you can see right here, there's a space between the quote and the citation. Very important. And please, if you're taking notes, which I should have told you half an hour ago to take notes on this, I know you can, this is a recording and you can go back. But if you are taking notes, this is an important one. Always have a space between your quote and your in-text parenthetical citation. Do not jam those two things together. Remember, it's all about audience awareness. This is for your audience, so you don't want to make it hard for your reader to actually read your essay, right? And when we jam things together, it's hard to read. So one little space there, you're good to go. And in the citation, let me see if I can, I guess I can zoom in a little. You'll see here, it's Fardouli et al. Now, if it were only Jasmine Fardouli who wrote this, then it would just be Fardouli in parentheses. And importantly, the period ends the sentence, okay? So you see how the period goes here at after the citation. That is crucial and also kind of almost counterintuitive to writers. So let me acknowledge the fact that, you're quoting someone here. And if it's the end of that person's sentence, most writers would be like, oh, well, let's put a period there. I get you. This is one of the rare exceptions where we will not put a period inside the quotation marks because a citation has to follow it, okay? So when you have a quotation, double quotation marks always, never use single quotation marks unless that quote occurs inside a larger quote. That's the only time that you'll use single quotation marks. And the reason for that is because if you use doubles inside of a double, it gets confusing. It's like, where does this quote end or begin, right? I hope that makes sense. Anyway, after the quotation marks, space, citation, period, because the citation is part of this whole statement. Your whole statement is a sentence, right? It's an independent clause. But the citation is a very important part, actually, of the statement itself. And so the statement's not over until you include the citation. Then and only then do you put the period at the end of the sentence, okay? So the period always goes after the citation. Keep in mind, only one period per sentence in the English language. And there are two exceptions to that. If this quote ended with a question mark or an exclamation mark, you would include those inside the quotation marks and then put your space and then your citation and then the period. Okay. That's the only time you're ever going to double up, so to speak, on sentence ending quotation or punctuation. I hope that makes sense. Again, I'll say it. It's an exception, but it's not something that happens that often, which is kind of why it's an exception, right? It's a rare exception that you'll have a quote with an exclamation mark or a question mark. Probably more often a question mark. Those marks have to be included inside the closing quotation marks because they connote a sense of tone for that statement, right? And an exclamation is what it is. It's exclamatory. It's like a pronouncement. It's very enthusiastic and emphatic. A question mark, of course, is a question, and so your voice in your head, or if you're reading this out loud, dips up like what would that be? That's a question, right? So most of the time, though, you're not going to have a question mark or an exclamation mark. It's just going to look like this. Okay, so let me pull out of there and I'll show you another one. This essay has two sources that have multiple authors. So the citation is et al. You could see up here at the top of page 4. So it's Diedrich's. There's the quote, overall well-being, ends the quote. Again, don't put the period just yet because we're not done. There's a space, Diedrich's et al. And et al, incidentally, is et space al period. If you're ever confused about any of that or just straight up not sure, but you want to get it right? Look it up. The it can be a really helpful place. So here's the citation. Lo and behold, there is the period at the end. I'm trying to highlight it. It's not working for me for whatever reason. There's the period after the closing parenthesis of the citation. The last one I'll show you, because this particular essay only uses 3 sources. I'm not really sure why. There we go. Is this one up here at the top of page 5 on the right-hand side. The quote is, for $3.99, users have access to a host of editing tools such as teeth whitening and making a person's forehead, nose, or waist smaller. There should be a comma after nose, but that's neither here nor there. I'm not editing this essay anymore. And you can see that the last name of the author of this quote is Chu, okay? So if I'm curious about this and I want to just say, you know what, that was an interesting quote. I want to read this article a little bit further and maybe even in its entirety, which is always the way you should read articles anyway. You never know what the whole thing's about unless you read the whole thing. So I'm going to say, as your reader, I'm going to say, I just want to jump down and see Chu. Okay, so Allison Chu wrote this, right? There we go. And it's called Patients Are Desperate to Resemble Their Doctored Selfies. Plastic Surgeons Alarmed by Snapchat Dysmorphia. That's a long title. I will say this. there is one thing that just as a side note, whenever you write a title, especially the title of your essay, you want to capitalize all principal words in a title. And principal words are, think of them as the big word. It's basically any word over 3 letters. The little connector words we call articles. In here it would be are, by. We don't need to capitalize those, but all of the longer words you want to capitalize them because it's a title. Oh, and incidentally, here's a use of the single quotation marks inside double quotation marks. How about that? That's exciting. So I was in the essay. I got interested in maybe jumping ahead to see what is this article from Allison Chu. who was writing for the Washington Post. And here it is. Now, this is not perfect. This list is not perfect. It's nearly perfect, but there's one thing that's wrong with it. And that is that MLA requires us to always have all of the font in an essay should be black. Okay, so obviously this is blue because it's kind of a default thing when we have a hyperlink, in one of our essays. It'll oftentimes, depending on the platform you're using, it'll change it to blue. I think to distinguish it from the black font. Totally get that. Just so you know, though, if you were submitting this essay for an instructor's review or peer review or a grade, any of that stuff, select all, black font, do it, okay? Now, the cool thing about a digital submission is I can actually click on this. Let's see if it's gonna happen or not. I can click on this and it will take me to, got bumped off the share there for a second. It will take me to the actual article itself. So again, technology can be a great thing, right? The internet can be a great thing. And here it is. I can read this whole article if I want to. Very helpful. Good stuff. Okay, so pause to hydrate. Yep. That's my coffee. I'm not so much hydrating as I am just trying to warm up my voice a little. So I wanted to show you that essay, a real piece of student writing to show you exactly how your citation should look in the kind of real world of the body of your essay, okay? As you can see, each one of those 3 citations in that entry, or sorry, in that essay, exactly matched the very first word that's in the hanging indent, okay? The hanging indent of the citation entry in the works cited list. It's an exact science. You have to do it exactly that way. Otherwise, if you're in the body of the essay and let's say chew is the citation, but then the author has made a mistake in their works cited essay and or their works cited list, and they've used the title of the article instead, you're going to have to hunt around and through all of the sources and see like, well, who wrote this one, and then maybe you'll find Allison Chu in there. Like, nope, don't do that to your reader. Everything you do on the page is for your audience, okay? Yeah, it's for you too. You're the writer, of course, but audience awareness is key. Remember, it's one of the 2 guiding principles. The other is purpose. What's your purpose? All right. I think it might be helpful to just circle back to the owl real quick. And let me see if I can show you one last thing. Oh, you know what? Here, I'm gonna do something a little different. So hang tight. This is funny because we're live, but we're not live, so we're recording live. It's like Saturday Night Live, but it's like we're watching it on the West Coast after it's aired on the East. So I'm gonna bring up this short and super helpful YouTube video that I use for all of my classes to show you a little bit about easybib.com, and it's this super helpful 4.5-minute video, and I will put the link to it in the chat so that you can find this on your own. And it's kind of a shortened version of what I was just telling you how to do, which is basically how to create an MLA works cited list. Now, this is how to create an MLA works cited list using EasyBib, okay? And you'll notice one thing about this, there's a grammatical error. This person, Mr. BG's tech video, said how to create a MLA works cited page. Nope. That's incorrect.
Wow. Look at that.
But that's just the English teacher and me. Not hypercorrecting, but just trying to show people. I would be remiss if I didn't point out to you like, hey, that's wrong. All right. So here's the share. This is probably an ad for Grammarly.
94% of people believe company culture
Nope.
is important to an organization.
How
Tis
to
not.
create MLA works cited using EasyBib. As you can see, I've got the split screen here. On the left is my article, on the right is EasyBib. So I'm going to copy the link up here and paste it into EasyBib.
The citation generator is easybib.com. You might have to, start an account. You might not. I think if you don't start an account, they just make you watch an ad or two. Totally worth it, because doing this on your own is a nightmare. Trust me, I don't recommend it. So use a citation generator online. I know the Google Docs also has a version of this as well. If that works for you, that's great. Just make sure that your list looks like the sample, okay? In this video.
It tells me what it's found. I hit continue. And any field in red are the fields that it could not figure out. Now, in this case, the title of the website they've got here, Ernest Hemingway Biographical. They don't know who the publisher or sponsor of the site is, but I do. You can see it's nobelprize.org. So what you're going to want to do is type that in. So I've typed that in there. The next thing, it's asking me to try to figure out when this was electronically published. So what you are going to want to do is scroll down the article to see if there's a publication date at the bottom. I do not see any publication date. I see a copyright date of 1945, but that's not when this article was written.
54.
So seeing no date, I'm just going to move on and have it create my citation. And here it is, right here. And so now I'm going to copy this. And what I'm going to do is paste it into a Google Doc. Now, eventually I'm going to throw this onto my presentation slide, but for right now, it's easier for me to just paste these into a Google Doc. Okay, here's one more example. We're going to take a look at this article on the lifestyle of a fisherman. Again, I'm going to copy the link. I'm going to paste it into EasyBib.
This is helpful if most of what you're doing or all of what you're doing is online. Okay, so we're just copying URLs. You can see here that the tab that's open is the website tab. However, if you were citing from a book or a newspaper or a journal or a database or something more specific, other common types, you would click here, all 59 options, which would also include things like an interview with a person that you do, personally for your own uses, or a film. There are, very specific kind of ways to cite this stuff. And so what you want to make sure is that you're using the correct tab that corresponds with the type of source that you're citing. And in this case, again, it's a website URL.
It again tells me what it's found. I hit continue. And now it's asking for the author. It says it could not figure out the author. Now there is an author right here. It's Simon Rios. So I'm going to type his name in here in the blank. Next, asking for a publisher or sponsor of this website. The publisher of this website is 90.9 WBUR, a radio station. So I'm going to write that in. Now, once again, it's asking me when this was electronically published. I can't seem to find a publication date, so I'm just going to go ahead and hit create citation. Okay, and as you can see, here is my citation. I'm going to copy this and paste it right into my Google Doc. All right, finally, I'm going to show you how to cite an image using EasyBib. So I've got my link highlighted up here. I'm going to paste it into EasyBib. Hit cite. Oops, they could not figure it out. So what it has done is taken me to a form where I can enter this information myself. Now, what I need to do is figure out the source type. And so this particular object here of this marlin, it's a digital image. So when you click on the type, and most of the pictures that you find are going to be digital images, then EasyBib will automatically create a form for you to create. So it asked me for a title. There is no title here. So barring that, I'm going to give it my own description, Marlin coming out of the water. I do not know the author or the photographer of this particular image. However, the website title I can tell from up here is nationalgeographic.com. So I'm going to write that there. And so what I actually did is I just wrote National Geographic, and the publisher of the site, I scrolled down to the bottom, and it was the National Geographic Society. So I wrote that down there for publisher. I put in the link. I don't know when this was published, but I can type the day that I went to the site, which is today. And now I've added all my information, and I'm going to hit create citation. And here it is. I'm going to copy and paste it and throw it right into my Google Doc. And that was how to cite an image using MLA format with EasyBib.
Now, one thing that I want to point out, see how this isn't quite finished yet, at least not for our purposes. It's close. Now, EasyBib has done all the hard work of gathering all the information, from their database. It's a wildly infinite database. So great stuff. That would take us a very, very long time. And it's very specific. It's almost like writing on a legal form, like legalese has to be specific down to where a particular period or a particular capital letter or an outline, like a Roman numeral is placed or whatever. The stuff's so very specific, but EasyBib has now done for us the majority of the work. We only have to do a few things from this point on. And I would say that whether you're using Google Docs or anything else, what I would do would be to copy these three sources here, just copy it, put it at the end of my essay. Remember, your works cited list must be on its own dedicated page. Do not just scroll down a few lines after your last line of your essay body and then put your works cited in. No, the works cited list is on its own page. So at the very top of its own page, it says works cited, right? I would take these three sources, copy and paste them, put them in 12-point Times New Roman font. I would double space them. And then I would, keep the first line of each separate entry. So the one that says Ernest Hemingway, the one that says Rios Simon, and the last one that says Marlin coming out of the water. Those lines should be justified to the left, just like our sample, right? And I would manually, because this is sometimes how you have to do it, manually go and single tab indent each line under the first line of each separate entry. I hope that makes sense. Let's go quickly back to the model and wrap it up here. That's not the model. This is the model. Oh, pardon me. Again, it has to look like this. And if it doesn't look like this, you have some more work to do. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that was instructive. I do want to give you, let's see, I'll put the URL for that video in the chat, just in case you need to go back to it and you're like, Jay, I have no idea where that was. I will put that one in the chat. And let me grab one more thing for you before I go, because although I was trying to be cool about it, I actually pulled up the wrong video. I think that one that I just showed you was helpful, but I have about 4 or 5 of them. And so just by the title alone, I thought it was one thing and it was actually another. So hang on one sec. I'm going to show you this URL for this. I'll give you this URL.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jay. I'll make sure to post all of these in the YouTube recording under the description.
Okay.
So all of these links should be living there. And yeah, once again, thank you so much for this very informative workshop on citing. I personally learned a lot, and I hope the students who are watching this video also learned a lot. And yeah, thank you so much.
Awesome. Glad to be here, and enjoy the day. Write to me at jjackal@dvc.edu. It's in the chat, and yeah, see you next time.
Thank you.
All right.